everyone! So since I did my review of this book by Hannah Lynn, Whimsy Girls Through the Decades, I've had a few comments from people asking me to show you how I colour the CDs that you see in the background here. So I was a little bit reluctant to do it at first because I know that Helen Elliston already has a CD tutorial in one of her Colourist Special Effects books, but I'm pretty sure that our method and our execution is going to be completely different because Helen's a professional artist and this was me just winging it because I couldn't be bothered to get up off the settee and get the book out. So yeah, I'm going to do a tutorial of how I do it, and you know, it's effective at the end of the day. It's not technically perfect, but it's effective. So I've drawn out a little CD shape. It's off centre, but anyway, and the pencils that I used were Prismacolors. And I use Prismacolors, well, mainly because they're my favourite pencil, but also because they blend together, you know, without any kind of effort at all. And that's really what you need for this, especially when you're going from a very light colour to a completely different colour, you know, with different tones in between. You need pencils that are going to be easy on you to blend together. And if you are doing this with any other pencils that are maybe a bit harder, you can still do it. You'll just probably have to work a little bit more at getting the blends nice and smooth. So the colours that I used were Deco Yellow, Deco Pink, Hot Pink, Mulberry, Imperial Violet, Non-Photo Blue and Light Aqua. That's for the kind of rainbow bit. Then for the greys, 70%, 30% and 10% cool grey. So that's all the kind of colours that you will need. So if we just look back for a second at one of the CDs that I coloured, just so I can give you a bit of insight into sort of where to place the colours. As you can see here, right at the bottom in the centre of the CD, just looking at this centre strip where the light aqua is, you can see that it goes in a little bit of an upside down triangle shape. And it's sort of blunted at the bottom here. It doesn't go to a point, so it's sort of squared off at the bottom, but it's much wider at the top than it is down here. And that's the shape that you're going to have to try and keep all the way around each colour. And that just gives it that look of being rounded, I guess. I don't really know. That's how, you know, I googled a CD and that's kind of how it looks, so that's what I did. But yeah, just keep in mind keeping that kind of upside down triangle shape all throughout the colours. So I started off with the light aqua and basically just drew out that kind of shape that I've just mentioned. So an upside down triangle with a squared off bottom that kind of meets the centre line, but you know, this circle is completely off, but hopefully yours will be much neater and more accurate. But I'm just going to show you, that's probably a little bit too wide actually. Let's just come in a little bit. I'm just going to show you, you know, how I've done it. So I'll fill all that in with the light aqua, making sure that I'm using a really light hand, because at the moment we're just plotting out where we're putting the colours. We're not burnishing it just yet. And then right at the very edges of the light aqua, just making sure it's really nice and light, the pigment that we're putting down and the pressure that we're using, because we want it to blend into our next colour. And that colour is Non-Photo Blue. And these two blend really, really nicely together. So I'm just going to overlap it a little bit. And again, just trying to keep that shape of, you know, a slanted line that tapers off to the centre. So once you kind of overlapped your light aqua and you've left some nice light pigment on the edges for the next colour, we move on to the Imperial Violet. Now this is obviously much, much darker than your Non-Photo Blue, so you just have to be a little bit careful when you're putting your pencil down, the amount of pressure that you're using, because it can very easily sort of turn into a very distinct line between each colour, and we don't want that really. We want to try and blend it nicely and smoothly, you know, as possible. And that's why I do recommend Prismacolors for things like this, especially where you do need a really smooth blend, because they do half the work for you. So you don't have to mess around, you don't have to do too much blending and layering and things like that to get them to blend. So we've got a little layer there of the Imperial Violet. Now if you're wondering how thick to put these layers down, I would recommend that you kind of stagger the thickness. So some colours will be wider and thicker than others. Others might just be a very narrow band of colour. For example, let's just get my CD out again. So you can see here that the light aqua and the non-photo blue area is quite wide compared to this very thin, narrow stripe of hot pink. So really just mix it up a little bit. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. It's going to look effective, and everyone's going to know it's a CD straight away just because of where we've put the colours and the colours that we've chosen. So yeah, don't worry about that too much. Next colour is the Mulberry, and this colour takes us from a really deep purple to our hot pink. So you can see this is a middle colour, it's a transition colour. And yeah, so we're just overlapping again with the Imperial Violet. Don't worry about blending at the moment, because that's going to come when we continue to add layers and heighten our pressure a little bit. We're just plotting the colours for now. So you've got a bit of Mulberry there, then moving on to your hot pink. Again, this is a transition because we're trying to get from that dark purple to the lightest yellow in the set, basically. So we need to figure out how to do that with as little colours as possible, as little pencil as possible. So I've gone from the hot pink to a Deco Pink, which is the lightest pink in the set. And that is going to help us transition to the yellow. So again, just keeping your slanted line, just think of it as like a forward slash or a backward slash. And just try and keep that shape. So we've got a little bit of Deco Pink there, and then that should lead us straight into our Deco Yellow. So I'm going to overlap it. Keep a little bit of pure Deco Yellow at the side, and then you've basically plotted exactly where you want your colours to be, which I think when you're trying to keep to a certain shape is the way forward. That's the way to do it. Don't go straight in there with your heavy pressure and your final layer straight away. We really need to have a chance to plot out where the colours are going to go. So now that we've put that down, we need to build up the colour. So coming back again with the light aqua, I'm going to use a harder pressure this time. So it's almost fully burnished actually. I'm really pressing hard, but I am still keeping that shape. So you can see we're thicker at the top, we're tapering to a point at the bottom. I don't want to lose that shape. Or something like it anyway. So there we go. Then again, it's the non-photo blue. Just mixing that in, overlapping it with that light aqua. These two blend really well together anyway. They're not kind of that far apart from each other. So I'm blending that in. I'm remembering to keep my shape. And I'm just using a bit of a heavier pressure to try and saturate the colour a little bit more. So I'm just coming back in with that light aqua just over the edges and the blending area, just to smooth it out a little bit. But I'll probably need to do a third pass over just to make sure it's properly seamless. Then we've got that Imperial Violet. Now remember, we do need to be careful with the pressure because we do want it to blend nicely. So I'm doing a very, very light layer. But then I am pressing a little bit harder as we go along. So light pressure where it overlaps the non-photo blue. And then a little bit of a harder pressure. I'm just going to bring that out a little bit more. Again, it's all about trying to remember to keep that shape, because it can be very, very easy just to lose the shape. And then doing the same over here, so light overlapping the non-photo blue, and then a little bit heavier. And I'm using a mixture of strokes, so I'm doing that, I'm doing circles, making sure we're wider at the top and we're narrower at the bottom. Now you can use your non-photo blue as a blender across that line where it meets the Imperial Violet. So again, we're just trying to keep it really, really smooth. And using a medium hard pressure with your non-photo blue over that line where they meet will create a really, really nice blend. You've also got to be aware that when you're obviously using a lighter colour to blend a darker colour, some of that darker pigment may come and transfer over to the light area where you don't want it. So keep a little bit of scrap paper close by just to sort of clean off the tip of your lighter colour. Otherwise you're going to end up with bits of purple coming into the light aqua area, which is not what we want. Okay, so now that I've used the non-photo blue to blend into the Imperial Violet, we can come back in with our first colour, the light aqua, and we can use a nice medium hard pressure just to completely burnish that now. We won't have to go over that again. So really it's this kind of backwards and forwards blending that creates the seamlessness of the blend. Okay, so next up is the Mulberry. So again, I'm going to overlap it with the Imperial Violet. I'm going to go over some lines, that's fine. Trying to keep that shape. Then you can come back in with your Imperial Violet and again go over that transition line between the two colours so that they start to blend together nicely. Then we have the hot pink, exactly the same method, it's the same method all the way along. As I say, it's that backwards and forwards blending. You can bring some of your Mulberry in to blend that transition line if you think you need to. And then it's the Deco Pink. Don't forget we're using a medium hard pressure this time because we are trying to go for that super smooth look. But keep it light at the edge where you know your yellow needs to blend in. Just bringing the hot pink back with very light pressure to make sure we've got a nice blend transition. Now some of the Mulberry has actually gone onto my hot pink there and you can see the pigment has transferred, which looks a little bit messy. But the good thing about Prismacolors is you can kind of erase bits with your lighter colour. So using hard pressure and going over any bits of transferred pigment, it kind of just gets rid of them, like a blender pencil might do. And then finally we have the Deco Yellow. So I'm really pushing quite hard with the Deco Yellow to blend into our pink. And I also want a little bit of yellow just on its own at the edge. Now, if there are any bits that seem to you to be too separated, this is the time to go back in and just add a little light transition layer between them. So for example here, I think that this yellow and pink is just too separated, so I'm using the mid colour, the Deco Pink, to blend them together. So that will be one side of the colour of the CD. So basically I would repeat that over, well, you could do it 3 times here, like split into thirds. You could do it in every quarter. Doesn't really matter. I think I did it on every quarter with this, or I would have done if they weren't overlapped by her in the middle. But yeah, it's up to you. You could do 2 bands of colour, one either side, split it into thirds, do quarters, totally up to you. But you do need to do your coloured areas before you can go in and do your greys, because that gives you the space left that you need for your greys. So how to describe this without sounding ridiculous? You need to do all your colours first, basically, then do your greys, so you know how much space you've got to work with. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to just finish off the coloured bits, and then I'll come back to you and show you how to do the greys. So I've finished with the coloured parts now, and as you can see, I've messed up the proportions a little bit. If you're just looking at the white areas of the CD, you can see that these two here are okay, they've kept that shape, but this one has gone a little bit narrow, a little bit straight. But my excuse is that I just do these demos to give you the idea, and you can make it as neat as possible. You know, I'm not perfect, I'm not an artist, as we all know, but anyway, that is the basics of how to do the coloured bits on your CD. Now we need to look at the white areas. Now if we just go back to the CDs, you can see that I did this with grey, and I kind of gave it a bit of a brushed look, and that's just the strokes that I used. Looks a little bit like brushed metal. I don't know why, because CDs don't really look like brushed metal, but I think it just gives a bit of texture to the CD, and I don't know, I liked it. So starting off with the 70% cool grey, it's very, very similar to what we did before, but instead of going in lines, I'm going to go this way. So starting off in the centre of a white area that you've got, we're going to keep the shape that we started off with, so the narrow at the bottom, but as we start to come to the edge of the CD, you can see that my strokes are becoming longer and it's filling up more of the space, so it's almost like a little tornado. That's the way I think of it. Now I'm going to do all 3 of them at the same time so that we get the finished CD at the end. I'm trying to keep it as straight as possible, but because my CD is actually off in the first place, it's not easy. So yeah, starting really, really small and narrow, and then just building up to a larger tornado shape. Now again, at this stage, we're just plotting out exactly where we're going to put each of our colours. This is just not going to look right at all because it's too narrow, but I'm going to do my very best. Don't forget, I didn't do a full CD on the previous page that I coloured, so didn't really know how this was going to turn out. Okay, so once you've got all your little tornado shapes plotted in with your 70% cool grey, come in with your next grey, which is the 30%, and go over it completely. But instead of stopping at the same points as you did with your first colour, just go over them a little bit so it thickens the line. then you start to fill in more of the white area, but still keeping that shape. And then finally with the 10% cool grey, do exactly the same thing again. You can go quite wide on this one because we're going to be filling up all of the white area with this lightest grey anyway. But we'll save that to the end because we need to make sure that it's blending in with the yellow. So you should end up with something that looks like that. Now you can see that because we've not used the lines like we did here on the coloured parts, we've actually used this horizontal stroke. It's giving that look of a brushed metal already. So it's just basically the way that you put the pencil down that gives that texture. So we're going to come back in with our darkest grey and we're going to build it up just like we did with the coloured areas. Excuse me. So again, just using a bit of a medium heavy pressure this time. We want to do exactly the same thing, and it is an idea to keep your pencils quite sharp because we want to keep this look, this zigzaggy look. We're not trying to smooth it out like we did with the colours. So you can make it a little bit more rough. And then the same with the others. Down to the 30% cool grey and do the same thing again. So as I say, I'm using a medium hard pressure this time. Now, as you're moving up the tornado, you can start to curve your strokes a little bit like this. So we're going in the direction of the CD, we're curving them. If that makes sense. Now, I won't be able to do a lot on this one because it's so narrow, but I'll give it my best shot. So finally, in with the 10% cool grey and do exactly the same thing as before. So just using a curved stroke, zigzag, all the way up. And using the lightest grey directly over the top of your darkest grey does desaturate that dark grey quite a lot, and that's kind of the effect that we're looking for. We don't want a really deep saturated grey in the middle. We're trying to just give it that look of smoothness, I suppose, but with that rough look. It's very, very difficult to describe, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so this one might be easier as well to turn your book or your page so that you can keep that natural movement of your wrist. I think you should be able to hear how hard I'm pressing. You know, a light pressure you can barely hear it, but then really hard pressure, it's really loud. So once you've put on those final layers of the light grey. It should be pretty much burnished now, but we do want to blend them in with the yellow, as you can see. So I'm gonna take the edges of this grey, and I'm still using the linear thing that I did on the colours now, bring it up to the yellow. So it doesn't quite matter at this edge that you're starting to go linear rather than that way, because it's all blended in with itself anyway. So just bringing it right up to the yellow. And then the same over here. So once you've sort of brought it all the way up to the yellow and they're just meeting now, you can use your yellow as a little bit of a transitioner if you want, if you feel like your grey's gone too far, or you just want to make it a little bit smoother. You can use that yellow over the top of the edge of the grey to blend them a little bit. Now what I would do is probably come in with a slightly darker grey. So I think the darkest one after that is going to be the 90% cool grey. I'll just grab that. And just very, very lightly, literally as light as this, just slightly define some lines in the centre, just to give it a slight bit more contrast, and also sort of pull it out a little bit. Do you see what I meant now when I said I was winging it? Because this is literally experimentation, but that's the way that you learn things, I suppose. And then again, final step, go over it all with the 10% cool grey. It's not going to completely get rid of that grey that you've just put down, don't worry, but it will just dull it down a little bit so it looks slightly more natural. So your CD will probably look a million times better than mine, because you're going to get your proportions right, and you're going to keep your shape and everything like that. But obviously this is just a demo to show you what colours I use, and just a few little techniques and things to get the different textures on the CD. So hopefully, even though this isn't a super realistic masterpiece, it's given you a few ideas and some inspiration for maybe using this technique on different metals as well, maybe like an oil slick type of thing. I suppose there's all kind of places you could use this on, you know, even if it's not a metal, you could make it into a metal just by using the combination of the greys and the rainbow colours. So as I say, hopefully it's given you a lot of inspiration and ideas, and you'll be able to translate this into your colouring. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, please do give me a thumbs up on here and subscribe to the channel as well. And I will see you very soon on Colour with Claire.